Emily had always been good at hiding her feelings, or at least she thought she was. She had spent most of her adult life trying to be composed, dependable, and steady. People at work often said she was the calmest person in the room, someone who could handle long hours and constant pressure without ever raising her voice. At home, her husband Noah saw her as the strong center of their small world. She liked that image of herself. She was proud of it. But lately, she had felt something inside her slipping, like a drawer that no longer closed properly, no matter how many times she pushed it in. That evening, she stood in their kitchen in Seattle, pretending that washing dishes was the most important task of her day. The warm water rushed over her hands, but she barely felt it. Her thoughts were too loud. Every little worry she had pushed aside throughout the week pressed against her chest. She tried to focus on the steady rhythm of cleaning, the simple, controlled movements that usually helped her breathe easier, but her hands trembled every few seconds. She hoped Noah wouldn't notice. He did. Noah walked into the kitchen quietly, but Emily could feel his presence the same way she'd feel a sudden change in weather. He leaned against the doorway, watching her with an expression that was both concerned and patient. He didn't ask anything at first. He just observed, like he was trying to understand what she wasn't saying. Emily recognized that look. He used it when he was worried but didn't want to overwhelm her. He finally said, his voice soft but steady, "Your hands are shaking." She paused for only a second before dipping her hands back into the soapy water. She tried to act natural, but she could tell the moment had passed. Noah had seen it. She could feel his eyes on her, gentle but sharp enough to notice the smallest change in her. "I'm fine," she answered without turning around. She hoped her voice sounded convincing, but even she could hear the thinness in it. She wasn't someone who cried easily, and yet her eyes felt warm. She pulled her hair behind her ear just to hide the way her fingers trembled. Noah stepped closer. His footsteps were slow, giving her time to breathe if she needed it. She didn't want him to get closer. She didn't want him to see her face, because she knew the moment she looked at him, the mask she had worked so hard to keep on would fall. Noah stopped just a few steps behind her. "Emily, look at me." She didn't. She couldn't. If she turned around, she knew he would see that she wasn't as strong as she had been pretending to be for weeks. Something in her chest tightened, and her breath felt too shallow. She blinked fast, hoping the tears wouldn't spill. "Noah, please," she whispered. "Just not right now." Her voice cracked on the last words, and she froze. She hadn't meant to sound that fragile. She hated it. She hated how easily emotions rose when she didn't want them to. She wiped her hands on a towel and tried to steady herself, but her knees felt weak. She finally turned toward him, and the moment she met his eyes, everything she tried to hide slipped into the open. He didn't look shocked. He didn't look confused. He looked like someone who had been waiting for this moment, because he wanted her to break, but because he wanted her to stop carrying everything alone. "Emily," he said softly, "you don't have to pretend." With me, the words were simple, but they hit her harder than she expected. Her throat tightened, and she tried to speak, but nothing came out. She looked down, trying to gather herself, but that didn't help either. Her emotions were rising too quickly. She could feel the pressure in her chest, a mix of exhaustion, fear, and something she rarely admitted, loneliness in her own struggle. She took a shaky breath. "I'm just tired," she tried to say, but her voice sounded smaller than she wanted. "Work has been a lot. I'm fine." Noah's expression softened even more. He didn't interrupt. He didn't try to fix anything right away. He just stayed close, offering quiet support. That was the thing about Noah. He always gave her room, but never distance. It was comforting and frightening at the same time. Emily avoided his eyes again. She didn't want him to see how close she was to breaking. But Noah gently reached forward and took the towel from her hands, setting it aside like he was removing one more thing she didn't need to hold. "Emily," he said, "you're not Fine. And you don't have to be. That was the moment everything cracked. Her eyes filled before she could stop them. She pressed a hand to her forehead and took a sharp breath. I don't know what's happening to me, she whispered. I feel like I'm losing control of everything, and I don't know how to stop it. Noah stepped closer, but she stepped back instinctively. Not because she didn't want him, she did. But because she didn't want him to see every piece of her falling apart at once. But he still saw it. Her fear, her exhaustion, her confusion, all of it reflected in her trembling voice and shaking hands. He didn't push her. He just stayed where he was, eyes full of concern and affection, and in that quiet kitchen. With dishes still half-washed in the sink, Emily finally realized that hiding her struggle had become impossible. Noah had seen the break. She couldn't hide anymore, and she wasn't sure whether that scared her or relieved her. Emily sank onto the couch, letting her body collapse as if gravity had been holding her upright for weeks, and finally decided to let her go. She wrapped her knees close to her chest, trying to make herself small, so shrinking could somehow keep her fears contained. Noah sat a few feet away, giving her space, yet his presence was impossible to ignore. He wasn't just sitting there, he was watching, waiting, patient, like he had all the time in the world. But Emily knew he didn't. He always had a way of noticing the smallest things, the way her fingers held tightly around her knees, the subtle tremor in her breath, the slight quiver of her lips. He could see through her carefully maintained calm, the same calm that had started to crumble in the kitchen only moments ago. She looked down, avoiding his eyes, because looking at him meant exposing everything. But he didn't pressure her. He didn't ask her to speak right away. He simply sat and let the silence stretch, letting her thoughts rise to the surface before they overwhelmed her. That silence was a double-edged sword. It was comforting because he wasn't rushing her, but it was terrifying because it forced her to confront what she had been avoiding. Her mind raced with worries, regrets, and fierce fears she had long buried. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Noah, I don't know what's happening to me. I feel like I'm slipping, and I can't figure out why. He leaned forward slightly, careful not to crowd her. You don't have to figure it all out at once. Just tell me what's on your mind. She wanted to, but it wasn't that simple. Speaking meant revealing the thoughts she had been keeping secret even from herself. The fear of not being enough. The fear that she loved him more than he loved her. The fear that she was failing at life and marriage and everything she cared about. The words stuck in her throat, jagged and painful, waiting to be released. I'm scared. She admitted, finally, her voice breaking, that if you really see me, all of me, you'll see I'm not enough, that you'll be disappointed. In me, Noah's expression softened, but it wasn't pity. It was a quiet heartbreak that mirrored her own. Emily, he said gently, watching you try to carry everything alone hurts more than anything you could ever tell me. You don't have to do this by yourself. Her chest tightened, her heart racing with relief and anxiety at the same time. She wanted to believe him, to sink into the comfort of his words, but her mind kept spinning. She had been used to holding her burdens silently, convincing herself that showing weakness was dangerous. That vulnerability meant rejection. And now, sitting across from him, she realized how much she had underestimated his understanding. She took a shaky breath and asked the question that had been gnawing at her for days. Are we okay? Noah hesitated, and that hesitation twisted something in her stomach. She feared he might be pulling away, that her worries had already become reality. Then a small, almost accidental sound broke the tension of buzzing from his phone on the table. He glanced at it, and the faint change in his face made Emily's heart sink. Who is it? She asked softly. It's from work, he said, carefully measured. But it's not just that. Her stomach clenched. Something in his tone suggested he was about to reveal more than just a message from a colleague. Emily tried to steady herself, wishing she could prepare for whatever was coming. But she knew she couldn't. Her anxiety spiked, her breath grew short. She felt a familiar panic rising. Noah put the phone down slowly, deliberately. "I've been worried about you, Emily. I've asked your sister how you've been, how you're coping, 'cause I didn't want to push too hard. I thought I was protecting you by giving you space, but maybe I should have done more." Emily's eyes widened. Her sister had been the only one who noticed the exhaustion she had been hiding so carefully. Noah had reached out to her to check on Emily without even confronting her directly. The thought made her feel a mix of surprise and overwhelming relief. Somehow, he had been trying to protect her even while watching her break. You contacted my sister." Emily whispered, disbelief and gratitude mixing in her voice. "Yes," he admitted. "I wanted to make sure you were okay. I was afraid of saying the wrong thing, of making you feel worse. I thought if I gave you space, you'd recover on your own. But watching you today, seeing you struggle quietly, it made me realize I couldn't wait any longer. You needed me, even if you didn't know it." Emily felt tears building, and this time she didn't try to hold them back. She had spent too long trying to appear strong, too long convincing herself she had to manage everything alone. And now, hearing him explain, hearing him care in such a gentle and selfless way, her walls began to crumble. I didn't know you were worried," she admitted. "I thought maybe I was failing you. Maybe I was letting you down. I didn't want you to see me like this." Noah shook his head slowly, reaching out to gently touch her arm. "Not failing me, and I don't see you as weak. I see someone I love who sometimes needs help, who sometimes needs to lean on someone else. That's not weakness. That's being human." For the first time in weeks, Emily felt a flicker of calm. She leaned slightly toward him, but didn't fully allow herself to sink in yet. Her mind still raced with fear, but the warmth in his voice, the patience in his eyes, made her realize that maybe vulnerability wasn't as terrifying as she thought. And in that quiet living room, surrounded by the soft hum of the city outside, Emily understood something important. She didn't have to face her struggles alone. She had someone beside her who understood, who cared, who was willing to wait patiently while she figured out how to let go of her fear. The tension didn't disappear completely. Questions still lingered. Uncertainties hovered in the air. But, for the first time in a long while, Emily felt like she could breathe. She looked at him again, finally meeting his eyes, and whispered, "I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know I needed you." Noah smiled softly, reaching for her hand. "You don't have to ask, you just have to let me in." And in that simple truth, Emily realized that the cracks she had been hiding weren't a sign of weakness. They were a call to be seen, to be loved, and to trust someone enough to let them stay. The silence in the living room stretched between them like a fragile thread. Each second weighted with unspoken thoughts. Emily sat with her head slightly bowed, her hands clasped loosely in her lap. Noah remained beside her, steady and calm, a quiet anchor in the storm of her emotions. The buzz of his phone had faded, but the tension it brought lingered. Emily's heart raced, unsure if what she feared most would come true, or if the moment could finally bring them closer. She felt exposed, raw, and strangely vulnerable in a way she had not felt in months. Noah broke the silence gently. "Emily, don't have to hide anything from me. Not your fears, not your worries, not the cracks you've been holding back." She shook her head slightly, blinking back tears. I've been so afraid, Noah. Afraid that if you saw the real me, the tired, broken parts, you wouldn't love me the same way. That you'd think I'm weak." His eyes softened, filled with understanding rather than judgment. I don't see weakness. I see someone I love, someone who carries so much and sometimes forgets she doesn't have to do it alone." Her chest tightened, but it wasn't from fear. It was relief, mingled with the quiet ache of weeks she had spent pretending. She looked at him, searching for answers in his calm expression, but Were you ever disappointed in me? Did you think I wasn't enough? Noah shook his head slowly, reaching out to gently take her hand in his. Never. You could never be not enough for me. Watching you struggle quietly, it hurt. Yes, because I wanted to help sooner. But it didn't change how I feel about you. It only made me realize how much I want to be there for you, every step, every stumble. Emily let out a shaky breath, a mix of relief and lingering fear. She had imagined so many scenarios in her mind, him being frustrated, pulling away, maybe even doubting their life together. None of those fears matched reality. Instead, she felt warmth spreading through her chest. It's a kind of warmth that comes from realizing someone sees you completely and still chooses to stay. I didn't know how to let you in, she admitted, her voice trembling. I've been so used to carrying everything myself, I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't even know I needed it until now. Noah squeezed her hand gently. You don't have to ask. You just need to let me be here. That's enough. Emily felt herself leaning slightly toward him, drawn by the comfort of his presence. For weeks, she had pushed herself to be strong, to hide the cracks that were forming beneath the surface. Now, those cracks didn't feel like something to hide anymore. They felt like a bridge, something that could bring them closer if she allowed herself to cross it. She shifted on the couch, finally letting her body relax a little. The tension in her shoulders eased, and she felt the first genuine sense of safety in a long time. Noah's steady presence reminded her that she didn't have to face her fears alone. That her vulnerabilities didn't make her fragile, they made her human. I'm scared. She whispered again, softer this time, that, even with everything we have, I'll lose myself in my fears, in my worries. And I don't want that to come between us. Noah leaned closer, his voice firm but tender. We don't have to face anything alone. You won't lose yourself. You have me, always. And even when things feel overwhelming, even when it seems too much, we'll handle it together. That's what marriage is. It's what love is. Her eyes met his, searching for certainty, and found it in the unwavering calm of his gaze. The fear that had been gnawing at her for weeks began to loosen its grip. She realized that she had been carrying not just her own burdens, but the imagined burdens of what she thought he might think of her. None of it mattered now. He was here, fully present, fully aware, fully caring. Tears began to slip down her cheeks, but this time they weren't shameful or desperate. They were cleansing, a release of the tension and anxiety that had built up. For too long, she didn't pull away. Instead, she let him reach for her, guiding her gently to rest against him. The couch felt smaller now, but in the right way, a space where she could be safe, where her emotions could exist without judgment. I'm so tired of pretending, she whispered, pressing her forehead lightly against his chest. Tired of pretending that everything's fine when it's not? You don't have to pretend with me, he replied, his hand stroking her back softly. I want to see everything, the happy parts, the scared parts, the messy parts. That's who I love. That's who I want to be with, no matter what. The first time in what felt like months, Emily allowed herself to believe it. She allowed herself to feel the relief of being understood and supported, of being loved unconditionally even in moments of vulnerability. The weight that had been pressing on her chest began to ease, replaced by a quiet warmth that spread through her heart. She looked up at him, eyes shining with gratitude and something deeper, something she hadn't realized she had been longing for so intensely. Noah, can we start over? Can we really be honest with each other? No pretending, no hiding. He smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. We don't have to start over, Emily. We just need to continue, together, the way we always should have. Nothing's broken that can't be repaired with honesty and love. Her lips curved into a small, hopeful smile. For the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of peace. She realized that breaking didn't mean failure. It meant she had the courage to show someone her true self and trust them to stay. And Noah had stayed. They sat together in quiet, letting the moments settle around them. Emily's fears hadn't vanished completely, but she no longer felt alone in facing them. She had someone who understood her, who cared deeply, who could see her cracks and still choose to hold her in that gentle embrace. Emily finally understood that love wasn't about perfection. It was about connection, patience, and being present for each other when life was hard. She rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, letting herself finally breathe. And in that quiet room, surrounded by the soft hum of the city outside, Emily realized she had found something more valuable than strength. She had found safety, understanding, and the unwavering support of the person she loved most. Breaking had brought them closer, and for the first time she didn't need to hide it.